Hi, Kobe. Is it on, Chris? Are you ready? Yep. Can you hear me? Yep. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Time being 5:47, I would like to call the Economic Development Subcommittee, and it's kind of a hybrid meeting tonight because we have a Economic Development Subcommittee and a Steering Committee meeting that we're going to split a little bit of the meeting time with for November 16th, 2022 to order. Note to residents, all citizens are welcome to attend public board and committee meetings in person. Additionally, in an effort to maximize citizen engagement and opportunities, citizens will be able to continue to participate remotely via phone or Zoom. The meetings will also be live streamed by Franklin TV and shown on Comcast Channel 11 and Verizon Channel 29. The link to the Zoom meeting is on the agenda on the website. If you want to phone in, the call-in number is 1-929-205-6099. Enter the meeting ID 881-4366-1481, then press pound. Councilor Frangillo is on Zoom tonight, and in chambers with me is Councilor Sheridan, Councilor Jones, Chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals, Bruce Hunchard, Greg Rondo, the Chair of the Planning Board, and the Clerk of the Planning Board, Beth Wehrling. First, we are going to talk about something that's just for the EDC, the four of us, and that is a lot line cleanup. The area on or near Lincoln Street and Lincolnwood Drive. This is a basic lot line cleanup that the EDC has worked on for a long time, for probably more years than I've been on the council. Really what we do is we just try to make sure that all of the zoning areas actually fit into parcels, that existing parcels. So that's for Councilor Sheridan and Frangillo. I don't think you've seen any of these yet. So Jamie, do you want to?
Yeah.
Jamie first, then Brian?
Through you, Madam Chair, just for way of background, this is our first lot line cleanup. It is a town council goal for the year. There are a lot more of these to come. Previous EDCs have gotten through dozens and dozens of them. And so, Brian, if you want to just give a quick overview of what the proposal is.
Absolutely. Brian Sperner, Director of Planning and Community Development, record. The zoning bylaw, the zoning map amendment in front of you is one of many, as I mentioned. This is up on Lincoln Street and Lincolnwood Drive in that vicinity. You'll be seeing another one in probably another month. It'll be just to the south on Lincoln Street, just to give you reference on what you're going to be doing. This map amendment is on 12 parcels of land. 2 of them are actually town-owned. They are all either in rural residential 2 or single-family residential 3 zoning districts. They're in both, essentially. So what we're doing is on the left side, you're seeing where it is today on that map up there. And what we are proposing is to put it either in rural residential 2 or single-family residential 3. And that map on the right is where we've moved the lines. There is no, we look at the, to make sure that we're not impacting any private owners of the town, for that matter, on any aspect, for instance, the value of property or anything of that nature. And if you can develop more or less, and there is really no change in the case here at all, what I can see. So it really is just a matter of moving lines and going on to the next section of town, really, for the next thing. So the bylaw amendment, which Glenn loves to read, town council, with all these parcel numbers on them. There's 35.25 acres, roughly, that'll be changed from the 2 zoning districts to rural residential 2, and there is just 3 acres that'll be changed from the 2 to the single-family 3. Half of the property, roughly, is town-owned property. And if you have any questions on why we do it, a process, or anything else, but by all means, let me have the questions.
Counselor Sheridan, do you have any questions since this is the first time
So
you've?
why is this good? Why is it necessary? Why is it good?
Well, okay, so if you were to look on the map on the left, and the zoning districts, at one point, they were, say, drawn 200 feet off of the road, for instance. You know, okay, so, you know, they had to separate them somehow. They didn't separate them by parcel numbers or parcels, they just separated them drawing on a map. So they drew it probably 200 feet or so from the sideline, or the center line for that matter, of Lincoln Street to get that line there. So what it did is pretty much all of the properties along Lincoln Street are now in two different zoning districts, right? And that happened townwide. So this project is probably 15 years old now. It's been going on since, actually probably longer. So longer than I've been here, actually, it started.
Longer than
So-
Glenn, right?
So-
Steve.
So we take them little at a time, and we get them done. But right now, there's probably maybe 5 more. There is not a lot left in reality. But some of them, some of the parcels that are left are, you know, one parcel here, one parcel there. And, you know, so we'll have to deal with that someday. But we're dealing with the neighborhoods right now, and we're getting down to the end of the neighborhoods right now.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Counselor Jones?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brian, just a quick way, a little bit of history, but how far back do those old zones stem to? When were these zones first implemented that created a 200-foot buffer off the street? When do those original zones date back to?
I don't know exact dates, probably when I was a kid sometime. I mean, we're talking a long,
Jeez.
When Bruce was a
They would have
kid.
been on a stone with
yeah,
a
pretty
chisel.
much, yeah.
Crayon.
Bruce etched them in.
Yeah, Bruce.
The reason why I ask is because a lot of these property lines have been assessed and laid out by by deed dating back over 100 years ago.
Oh, sure.
So when they were laying out the zoning, I guess I'm just trying to visualize the thought process to why they decided to just kind of do like a swath here and a swath there without any
Well,
regard.
number one, when they created, I'm sorry, you want to take this, Mark? Or-
I think
Yeah,
my,
Go ahead.
When they did this, they didn't have the technology that you have now to be able to coordinate across lot lines
Fair
or
enough.
access records as easily, so it was easier to just set an arbitrary distance off the road, and that was the line.
That's fair. That's fair. Just curious what the
Is
One
that good?
example was when they approved the Franklin Industrial Park. I think they took a line from 495, went back 1,600 feet or something like that. That's how they came up with the industrial.
Okay. I was just curious.
Counselor Frangillo, do you have any questions for Brian?
I do not, no. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so,
Can I ask you a question?
okay,
Brian, do
Mr.
any of these-
Hunchard.
the old lots, they probably didn't comply with zoning, or do any of the new lots comply with zoning now because you're going down a zone from 2 to 3? You know, the ones off of, whatever the name of the street is, off Lincoln, one of off of Lincoln Street.
Lincoln
Not
Wood?
Meeting House, but not this one. Is that Lincolnwood?
Lincoln Wood?
Lincolnwood,
Yep.
just for an example.
Yeah,
I mean, do they comply any better now than they probably don't, they probably don't.
if they didn't comply, they don't comply, I mean, or if they comply just barely. I mean, we didn't change it
I don't think there's any difference.
for that specific.
Just curious as to why you go through the effort to do this, other than to maybe straighten out
Just to
some of
clean
the
it
lot
up.
lines. zoning.
We actually, there occasionally, somebody will come forward with a development where it's in 2 or 3, their lots are in 2, 3 zones. And you have to address each of them individually, or you can go, 50 feet into the next zone or something like that. So this just cleans it up so they don't have to do that. That's simple as that. It's, Some of these are larger parcels, and the front of their parcels are in one zone, and the rest of it is all in the other zone. So right now, somebody wanted to, if say our property, the Keller
Yeah.
Sullivan, was not a town property that could be developed, they could not fully develop it with the R3, it would have to go with R2, except if they wanted to get smaller lots up front, they might be able to do something. It just gets a little confusing sometimes for people, but that's really. And I think that if you look back 15 years, half the lots in town were like this. So this is just a continuation of an old project to just get them done. So that's all. I don't know.
I could understand why you did the commercial, like up and down 140, if you changed the lines there, but
Yeah.
these people back here, I don't think that they even know you're probably doing. I don't know if you've had any requests to do it, I don't understand what the process is and why we're taking all the time up, not me personally, but the town.
Well, in reality, this bylaw probably took 3 hours worth of work to put together. We'll do a mailing to the abutters. It'll go before a couple of boards, and it's really not that time consuming. It's just that it's something that we want to continue doing, and I think it's a good idea just to get done. That's all.
It's like to simplify the parcels and the
Just to
zoning.
clarify what zone you're
Yeah.
in, that's all. Yep, simple as that.
All set.
Are you,
Chair.
okay? Yes,
Just one more question.
okay.
So,
Counselor Jones?
Brian, in regards to the zones in this proposal that you've made some outreach to the neighbors in regards to changing, as part of being in that area, why isn't the area immediately to the east of Lincoln Street addressed on the lower half of this map as well? Why aren't, because I still see that there's a few properties here where it quite literally cuts in half. Why weren't
We're
those?
talking about the west side of Lincoln?
That's the
Yes.
next one.
Yeah, that one actually goes down another, maybe a tenth of a mile, so it's gonna be in the next bylaw
Okay,
amendment. Yeah,
so
next
we'll
map
get to
amendment.
that.
Yeah.
Okay. I was
You'll
just
get to
wondering why that wasn't addressed as part of this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
A little bit out of time.
I know, it's chewing.
A little bit out of time.
It's like really slow Pac-Man.
I would accept a motion to move by, what is this? Proposed zoning map amendment 22A onto the town council.
So moved.
A second? All in favor, signify by saying aye, but I have to do a roll call vote. So I'm going to do Frangillo,
Yes.
Chardon,
Aye.
Jones,
Yes.
Chair, yes. Okay, so on it goes to the town council. Thank you, Brian. Okay. The second item for discussion, I'm going to move right along here, is some of the zoning things that we've been discussing. I think is we have some good proposal in front of us tonight. You know, to me, it seems like there's this coincidence with like the EDC goals, the housing production plan, the MBTA community regulations, and the Franklin for All project. All of this stuff is kind of coincidentally all come together at the same time. I think it's pretty cool that we all have the same ideas and what we wanted and the recommendations from those. So we have the steering committee for the Franklin for All with us tonight. I think going forward, what we'll probably do is go back into our own kind of separate lanes. And so the process will be that the EDC recommends to send the zoning changes to the full council. Then the full council sends it to the planning board. The planning board has a public hearing on it. Then it comes back to the town council. We read it twice, and we have a public hearing on it. So there's a lot of chances for all of us and everyone out there to talk about these things. And I just wanted to make sure that we all kind of understood that I think it's time for us to go back into our own lanes. But I'm so excited that the whole steering committee is here tonight because it means that everybody really wanted to be here. And I want to thank them for all the work they did and how much they want to be here. They, on a dime, they showed up. So I think that's awesome. It's very exciting that I think we've built a lot of really good relationships through this project. But I am going to throw it over to Jamie, I think. Jamie, do you want to start?
Really quickly.
Are you going to start on multifamily housing density?
No.
Or you?
I'm going to go even 30,000 feet higher than that.
Okay.
So through you, Madam Chair, through the committee, just to give a little background tonight, there's two issues that are kind of being worked on simultaneously. They go hand in hand. One is to look at an inclusionary zoning bylaw that this community has been working on for a really long time. It is, again, one of the goals for the town council on this legislative agenda. And in some ways, it might have been fitting that it got delayed for a few years, because in the interim, we're the only community that touches Franklin that does not have an inclusionary zoning bylaw. And I think at a minimum, to be honest, that is slightly embarrassing. And so we feel as a staff, and I think a lot of people in the community feel like this is something that we need to get on the books, that the town's been working on for a long time. As fate would have it, the governor put out the MBTA communities guidelines, which sets a by right set of guidelines for housing around a half mile of the train station. And so, as we all know, also the housing crisis of cost is pricing a lot of people out of Massachusetts and the community. So all those things wrapped and tied together, the staff and Brian especially and Amy have put together what we believe to be a very good inclusionary zoning bylaw that incorporates the community need, respects the building community and the dynamics of building housing, but also complies completely with the MBTA communities law that the governor put on in regulation earlier this year. And hopefully in the near future, like some of the other projects in the community, this will help increase and maintain some level of small amount of affordable housing stock for residents in the community. Brian's going to walk us through, walk us through the inclusionary zoning bylaw, but also the use table. And then the final piece is density, which I think is where he's going to start off with. I think all of you have heard, and we have all heard, I know we've heard many, many different views on the issue of density in the community. And ultimately, Brian and the staff were able to package a proposal together that should allow a lot more flexibility for everybody, and put some other strongholds in to hopefully in some areas make sure that density is better controlled than it has been recently. So with that as a background, Brian, if you want to take it away and walk everybody through the proposals.
All right, thank you. As you can see on the screen, there is use regulation schedule part 6, or part 6
7.
actually, which is attachment 7 to the zoning bylaw. That is the principal use are all residential in that table. Previously, it was either a multifamily or apartment, a single family or two-family, and that were two-family new or by conversion. So we were, while we were going through the public process, Franklin for All and other processes, we were being told that, why isn't a three-family allowed by right, or why can't, if, we understand large multifamilies shouldn't be in every zone, but why can't a three-family be allowed in some zones? So what we did was we took the multifamily and apartment line, 6.1, and we created a 6.1A and a 6.1B. B being a 3 housing unit, and the other being 4 or more housing units. Any multifamily, 4 housing units or more. That way you're able to separate the two out. And we have put it, so the first line actually, all of the lines in the chart go, everything in that first row go away, and it's replaced by the 2 rows that we have there. Many of whether by no, yes, by or right, or a public special permit process, most of it has not changed a lot. But the big things that have changed are that the multifamily in General Residential 5 and C1 are now allowed by right up to a certain size development, okay? And that is to go along with the MBTA requirements. So we're suggesting a 2,750 square foot lot area is required per each unit. And that gives you just over the 15 units per acre that MBTA was requiring by right within a half mile of the MBTA station. So the changes in those two zones and allowing the downtown commercial to stay the same, it already allows by right up to 21 or so. It's actually every 2,000 square feet you need. Those three zones will take care of the MBTA requirements for by right multifamily housing. If a developer wants to get a denser development, they still have the option to go to the planning board for a special permit. On the 6.1B, the 3 housing units, we put those by right in many of the areas that already allow a duplex, a little bit denser than the single-family residential. It's not in the rural 1, rural 2, or 3 for that matter. It does, we do allow it, we are suggesting it's allowed in single-family 4, but the lot that they put it on would have to be about 25% greater than required for a single-family dwelling, which is what they do on by a conversion or in a new 2-family. So treating a 2-family and a 3-family the same way. We have a couple of notes in here. One of them, note 3, which goes along with GR5 and C1, commercial 1 zone, in that no more than one dwelling unit, instead of 1,000 square feet, which was 43 units per acre, it would be 2,750, which is a little more than the 15. It's under 16. And it says additional dwelling units may be allowed by special permit from the planning board. Note 4 that goes along with any multifamily is all multifamily developments with 5 or more housing units are required to address the affordable housing requirements in section 185.51. 185.51 doesn't exist today. That's the inclusionary bylaw, if you would have passed that. And that sums up, in general, that bylaw. And of course, the reason for it is the MBTA requirements, the allowing the developer a by right multifamily to a certain point, but if they want more, they still have the right to go to a planning board for a special permit. I personally believe it's something that it will work for development, but I think it's up to the town to provide comment, counselors and others, of course, on this committee and the general public for that matter.
Jamie?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So thanks, Brian, for that great summary. In real short, right now, any housing in those districts, you have to go through the planning board via special permit. So the big change here is to comply with MBTA communities, those 15 units are by right. Over 15 requires a special permit from the planning board, and there is no cap on the size of that in terms of where that could go. But that does establish a by right, minimum, which complies with MBTA communities, which we do not have right now, where all of those housing for all of those projects have to be by special permit, which does make that advantageous, and include the inclusionary zoning percentage, which we are now limited to by the governor's rule, can only be 10% of those 15. And so we're just complying with the minimum standards that with what the governor has put out. I can't explain or predict whether a new administration would change that. I think it's highly unlikely early, maybe after a year or two, possibly, I don't know, but at that time, we'd take it up. And as a staff believes it's not really worth waiting for anything to change. This is really the rule that we're going to be working with probably for a while. Thank you.
May want to explain what inclusionary zoning is, because the term's been used, but nobody's defined it.
Go ahead, Mark.
Mr. Sorrell, Attorney Sorrell, would you like to explain what inclusionary zoning is?
Well, that's the next
Well,
thing.
yeah,
Well,
but
but
the
it should be
term,
talked
it's a
as one.
shorthand phrase, but in fact, what it means is a certain percentage of the housing will be affordable as defined under the law, which is affordable for a family making 80% of the median income for the Greater Boston area. Mandatory.
Right, and in this area now, the MBTA community area, a half a mile around the train station, it can only be up to 10%.
Yeah, the governor's-
Affordable housing.
The governor's plans,
Oh,
the legislation and regulations only addressed creation as a right of multifamily housing. It did not address whether it was gonna be market rate or affordable.
Right.
A lot of municipalities responded, if we're gonna have to do this, we're gonna make sure that there's an affordable component, and the governor, in response, made a determination of what that percentage would be, which is no more than 10%.
Right. Only for the area around the MBTA.
Yep.
Right, half a mile around. Okay. Anyone have any questions for Brian? Beth? Hi.
Thank you. Couple questions, Brian, and your department. Thank you for working on this and bringing it to a point where I think that the 15 units, you know, meeting the requirements of MBTA communities. I know our hands are kind of tied on what we can do, and I think it really brings it to a point that's going to be good for the area that we're trying to meet. And the inclusionary zoning, glad to see that's happening. It's been a long time that that's been worked on in the town. And just to clarify, it's inclusionary zoning for multifamily, and it's not just for the MBTA communities. It's, you know, pretty much anywhere that it applies for the multifamily, correct?
The inclusionary zoning bylaw that we'll be talking about in a minute is anywhere multifamily is. It is not just in the MBTA zone, if
Okay,
you will.
all right, all right, got that. So then I guess my main questions have to do with the 3 housing units. So in the single-family residential 4. I guess in looking at that particular zoning district, knowing that a lot of those lots are kind of smaller, and the likelihood of having new construction happening for, you know, a 3-family home, what is the thought on how that would happen by conversion? Because that doesn't seem to be thought of in this particular version of the bylaw. Is there any thought that, you know, there are a lot of larger houses, a lot of single-family homes in that district, or is there a thought on how somebody might convert versus building new, or is the 3-family anything that is impacting the MBTA communities, or is that just something we're thinking of adding on? And looking at other parts of the bylaw that might be affected by this change, the intent of the districts in 185-4, the definition of a single-family residential 4 might need to be updated as well to reflect the inclusion of, you know, a 3-family. I'm just not sure 100% on board with 3 families in that particular district for the thought of, you know, how it might impact all the single-family homes and the intent of that district. Just my thoughts.
I just going to respond to that. In that zone, there are a lot of larger single families that were converted into 2-3 families. There's already a lot of that going on. So if you actually run down each address in that district, which we've done, there's a substantial amount that are no longer 1 family. The duplexes, there's a variety of different things in there. So this would allow a person with a little bit bigger lot to get an additional housing unit on their property. That's the intent. Seeing it is it is considered still multifamily, it is actually still considered a commercial, essentially a commercial use. Design review actually kicks in on anything that's that more than a duplex. So there's that also, that they would have to take a look at if they're gonna convert something over or if they're gonna build new, they would have to go through that. But it would not be a special permit, it would be a by right use, as long as they have a little bit larger lot. That's the intent.
I just have a follow-up question on that.
Go ahead, yeah.
So conversion would be treated the same way, through a site plan or something to that effect, or how would that be?
It's not a site plan.
So if it's by right, then it's just,
Yeah.
sorry. guess
I
I'm a little
agree,
confused.
and I didn't actually, I'm sitting here thinking about the concept of it being a multifamily development, even three-family, and needing to go to planning board, but it is really a by right, so you're looking at safety issues and things of that nature. And you're not looking at, you're not looking at a major amount of site work and everything on those properties, obviously. So, yeah, it would probably have to go to a planning board, site plan review process. Design review would kick in because it is considered a commercial development, unless it's an industrial, that's besides the point.
Okay, Beth, are you,
I'm all set.
okay,
Thanks.
I'm gonna go to Kobe first, okay, Greg? Counselor Frangillo?
Yes, thank you. So this is one of my favorite days of the year. I have been,
Can you speak louder, Kobe?
apologies, you can hear me. I'm yelling in the room, so if you can't hear me, it might be on your side. This is about as loud as I can get. So I think that this is a great, and I'm going to focus mostly on the multifamily piece for now. We'll get to inclusionary zoning. I think it's a great step forward, and it's in line with the vision of the Franklin for All piece, and sort of what the community needs are. My fear is that it, in effect, on its own, will make no meaningful difference toward achieving our goals, right? So part of the vision for Franklin Center, based on the input of Franklin for All, were zoning laws more in line with historic development patterns, making it easier for landowners to improve their properties, a range of housing types in Franklin Center to serve households at a range of incomes, including low-income households, a vibrant downtown center with the appropriate levels of residential density to support local businesses, downtown properties that provide enough value and revenue to Franklin. If that's what we're trying to get to, this on its own doesn't get us any closer to that. And the reason is because what's slowing development down is not only uses by right, but it's all the regulations around it that actually allow a project to be financed and developed, a multifamily piece to be financed and developed, right? There are high construction costs, high land costs, and high soft costs when you make everything by special permit. So without addressing setbacks, lot coverage, size of properties, parking, all these projects, and I tried to speak with as many developers as I can in advance of this meeting. They all said that this will make no difference. They will need every single project that is in this area will still need to go through the special permit process with all the same costs and all the same financial it's a great step, like it's better than not having it, but I don't think it actually gets us any closer to the goals, without addressing the other pieces.
Would you like to respond to that, Brian?
Yeah, I'll give it a try, sure. I understand what you're saying. This is an issue that, I'm gonna say 15 years ago, or maybe at least 12, Department of Planning and Community Development and other people were talking about that allowing the density that it allows in C1 in general residential 5 by special permit only, not having a by right component, makes a developer want to develop as dense as they possibly can, because they got to go through the special permit process anyway. They might as well get as many as they can per acre, get as dense a development as they possibly can. This would give them, by right, a medium-size multifamily type of development. If they had 2 acres, they're going to put 31, 32 units on a parcel like that. If they can put together a little bit bigger, then they can get a bigger development. If they want more, they can still go to the planning board. But it does give them a smaller development by right, which is what the MBTA requirements are. And if I were sitting here and we didn't have MBTA requirements, I would say, well, should it be 15 per acre? Should it be 20 per acre? Should it be whatever? But we went in line with what the MBTA requirements are. We developed, 10 years ago when we did the downtown commercial zone that was created, we went with 20 units per acre, or 1 per 2,000 square feet, by right. And you want more, then you can go get a planning board special permit. That's exactly the same concept, it's just a little bit different density on these other 2 zoning districts. So. And I know it doesn't do everything that certain people want. It doesn't address, it doesn't address parking. It doesn't address all the other issues that you might want to talk about. But this is a baseline density, housing density issue that we're dealing with. We're not dealing with all of the other things that are related, and everything's related, obviously. And because we are going forward with an inclusionary zoning bylaw, at the same time, we wanted to make sure that we established the size multifamily developments that can be allowed by right. And if you're going to have a certain size development, regardless of the size, if it's multifamily, you're going to be required to have a affordable component to it, which is the inclusionary zoning. So that's the reason for the 2 going together side by side. If we don't go forward with the inclusionary zoning, we did go through with this, we just take a few words off of this, the chart that's up there, and don't refer it to the new zoning bylaw section. That's
Okay, thank you, Brian.
Yep.
Kobe, are you done with that for right now? I'm going to go to Greg, if you're okay. I can't hear him.
Shake your head, Kobe, if you agree.
As a question,
Do you give up the floor?
Can't hear you.
if you would like me to.
If you would like me to.
I'm going to go to Greg right now, okay? We'll come back.
We can't hear you anyway.
It's hard to hear you. It's very difficult to hear you, but we'll get back to you. I'm going to go to Greg right now.
Thank you. To Brian, I just had a couple quick questions based off of what Beth had spoke of. If we're talking like the zone within a half a mile, as an example, this zone goes out a mile. Can we do a radius to fall within the MBTA so we don't, we're getting a lot of pushback about growth in town still, getting a lot of pushback. So, is this gonna promote more growth where it's not wanted and needed? In it being just in that specific zone, could we put a bullseye in the center and pull a half a mile radius around and call that the zone that's gonna get worked within? Because this is gonna open up quite a bit of
Commercial one.
quite a bit of, commercial one, but it's also gonna end up Lincoln Street. You're gonna be all
How
in those
much
different
residential
zones.
files on it? On Lincoln?
You got some down at the front end, so it's a full radius around it, so I'm just thinking out loud, that's just one thought. And when you're talking 3 units to 4 units, you're talking 5, 6 cars per building now. That becomes a safety issue, I think, with little kids in schools and whatnot, for people pulling out of driveways and parking, so it's gonna trigger a lot of different thoughts. And safety's a huge thing with these things nowadays, especially if you're putting in a residential zone where it's tight as it is and you put a 3-family in there. And you may not have the space, but you're squeezed in it because of this, that's all. That's all I have, thank you.
Thank you. Would that be possible?
Which, what are you talking about?
The radius.
I mean,
The
to,
radius.
Just
to the radius,
Well,
and
well-
like, if it's like
No, but
a,
this doesn't, this incorporates all of C1 and all
Yep.
of GR5.
Right.
It's
Right.
not, we're not talking about spot zoning,
right,
just
Right.
the MBTA half mile.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Correct.
Hey,
That's-
you could do that, and actually, when the MAPC was working with us on the Franklin Corral and everything, I was suggesting things here and there, but I held back on the, one of the concepts, which is that we could actually create, take the GR5, for instance, and create out of it 2 different zones. You could create the things that are closer to the MBAS station as one zone, and then the rest of it as another. The same thing with C1. There are some people that want C1 to go away, and some people that want C1 expanded. So it would end up with a community debate on all of that, which is fine, we can have them. But as far as drawing a half-mile circle, then it would be a half-mile circle in anything in those 3 zones that we're talking about, but we would not include, C2 or anything else in that half-mile circle, for instance. I mean, you could do that. It's a basic overlay that would apply to additional, or the by right multifamily, I guess, is that all it would be. You could call it a MBTA's overlay zone too. I'm sure that some towns are probably playing with that kind of language right now. But, so there's any number of things that you could do, obviously. But I'd like to see eventually, the pink area, the lighter pink color, closer to the downtown it is, maybe the denser the development could be allowed. And that's the same thing, with the concept of, when you have residential 1, that's the very rural, residential 2, residential 3, and it goes down to the downtown core is your denser areas. And that was really the intent, I think, although I don't know when the original zoning was established, but is something similar to that. The farther away from the downtown core you get, the bigger the lots have to be and the less density. So the downtown core with the darker purple is your downtown commercial district. And around that, the lighter pink is your general residential 5, and in the light green there is the C1. The C1 does go down towards the crossing area, as they call it, Union and Cottage Street area. And that's really a kind of a village setting as it is. You could do some zoning down there, totally separate. On East Central Street, you could create you have C1 and C2, you could do another type of zoning district where the C1 is and continue it down a little ways. There's a lot of things you could do, but and going in the other direction on West Central, you could do a professional office type of zoning district. So really, it depends on what the town wants to do and each of the neighborhoods. We're doing a generic, somewhat generic situation with C1 and general residential 5. And because right now, those are the ones that are, multifamily housing is allowed in. It's allowed by special permit, but it's allowed a density that is, a lot of the neighbors don't want to see it, for that matter. You know, you put in something that's 43 units per acre next to a single-family house, they just don't want to see it there.
Right,
So
I don't think any
this
of
is-
us want to see.
Right, so this is,
Right,
this is
kinda
a
what I'm
a
getting
more
to.
Right, but the-
downscaled, this is a more downscaled
Yeah.
type where you can put 15 or 16 per acre, right? And if you really want a bigger development, they still have the right to go to planning board. So that's the intent, is to give the developer something but still allow them that option to go to planning board later on. If they need to do that, they need a bigger development, then they can do that. So, as far as drawing a circle, if you want to come up with a concept with an overlay district or something like that, we can do that, but it really, I don't know. My thought is that this is a first step, which is in line with the inclusionary zoning bylaw. If you get this passed, you get it through, you want to have during the master plan process, you want to talk about, have a zoning workshop in the town center again and talk about these districts. I think that would be a great idea. But I think one thing that this town has a tendency to do is look at a concept and say, oh, that's a great idea, and then the next time you have the workshop, you'd have the next meeting, you say, well, I want to do it this way instead, and before you know it, you just put it on hold, and nothing really gets changed. The C1 and GR5 concept has gone before Economic Development Committee and other groups probably 5 times in 15 years. And the density is still the way it was back then, which is fine if that's what the town wants. But we keep hearing that it's not what the town wants in certain areas. It's too dense. So,
Right, so that's, I guess, my question about Greg's comment is that, from what I understand, is that instead of 43 units per acre, it would be 15.
Yeah.
Right, so
43 by special permit.
by special permit,
Or 15
15
by
by
right,
right.
and the option for additional by special permit.
Right, and then, and it also, the lot has to be greater, 25% greater than a
Then a
Then-
single family.
than a single family.
Right. That's all.
So the lot has to be bigger. There's the potential for a lot less density,
That's correct.
right, per
That's
acre.
correct.
That is.
So
that is-
that's what I think people want to see. Sorry.
That's what you want, that's what you want.
Bruce, I think, did you want to say something?
To,
Jamie?
Madam Chair, to Greg's question, so if you take the
Yeah.
train station right here and you do a half mile, you could. But I put up the zoning map to make sure folks understand what we're talking about tonight is this purple, this lime green strip, this green strip down here, which is C1, which in the future you could call this section C1 something else, like Franklin Crossing Village District or something. Say maybe rules, but at least you could take it out if you didn't want to see the same type of development over there. But at least along the 140 corridor, and then you're talking about this dark orange. So if you encompass a half-mile circumference around, you're going to actually change a lot more zoning for personal property. I don't know how that would fare, right? Greg, you've been doing this a lot longer than I have. I don't know, engaging more property owners in that circle, I don't know if that's going to make it easier or harder. I'm not saying it's the wrong way, but if we're able to get through the inclusionary zoning process, the goal then would be, I think, is to bring in, Mark Bobrowski to do a 40R seminar and just see if there are other options that are there. But I think, Greg, you know that if you did do that half mile, you're going to change a lot of people in other districts as well.
I get it.
And then the risk is does the governor change the rules? And it's like, oh, now we got a mile. Oh, it's 0.75 of a mile. Oh, we don't want it anymore. And then you're doing a lot of work on zoning where you're just right now affecting the only zoning areas really, truly, are this one in the middle, the darker orange, and this light strip of green right here, and maybe some of this down here as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Jamie.
Just to Jamie's point, I do understand it's quite a bit, but it was just a thought of just opening up that much more properties to get built on. You know, the amount getting built and what's being out there is, from what I gather, more than what everybody wants to see and what they want. So I just don't want to promote any more growth in areas that can't sustain it. That's all.
And Greg's 100% right.
Yeah.
There's a reason why the governor did a half mile, because that's what the data shows people are willing to walk to get to the train. So from a smart growth perspective, it makes a lot of sense. The problem is implementing this on this one-size-fits-all methodology has obviously resulted in a tremendous amount of anti-sentiment against this rule to the Commonwealth, where the governor just a couple weeks ago changed the rule from no affordable housing cap. He had no affordable housing at all in the 15 units. Now you can do a maximum of 10% because of such blowback from many municipalities. So I think we agree on all of this. You know, it's just a question of whether or not the appetite from the EDC or other boards is there to say, well, we're just going to draw a circle right around a half mile. We could certainly do that.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie.
Bruce?
Not leaving me a lot of time.
I'm gonna get my timer.
That's the measurement, the half mile from the train station. Is that as the crow flies, or as the car drives, or how you walk, or you run it with a measuring stick, or how does that work?
That's a very good question. The half mile is, I don't actually know what the specific wording is.
Okay, you
But I
ever
bel-
hear, you
but
ever
I
hear the
believe-
story that nobody asks a question that they don't know the answer to? I was told it was a half a mile by
Crow.
somebody who's,
As a crow
As a crow
flies is
flies.
As a crow
likely
flies.
what it
Yes.
is. But, I mean, because it can't really be walking, for instance, or driving, because, you know, how do you know you can get down that road?
Wasn't they doing walk?
the minimum recommendation, or is this a minimum or a maximum, 2,750 square feet of a acre?
2,700.
That's
2750
15
from the
units by
MBTA.
acre.
No, per
One
acre,
unit
though.
per 2,750 would give you would give you just under 16.
Okay, and so right now with a special permit from the planning board, you get one per 1,000 square feet.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
I'm sure that everybody's willing to give up something so that they didn't have to go to the planning board and go through the, you know, the permit process that way, or the special permit process. My recommendation would be to cut this down to 2,000 square feet, because I don't think you can do one without the other, without the inclusionary, because people are gonna want inclusionary, you wanna put that in, so this is gonna do it. If you do it the way you're talking with 2,700 square feet, 2,750 square feet, you're only gonna get 14, 15 units per that. I use 40,000 square feet as a builder's acre. So if you do that, and you're gonna include inclusionary, that means they're gonna be building 2 units for 15, 2 affordable units for 15. Whereas if you give them if you make it 2,000 square feet, they'll have 20 units to eat up that, to make up the difference for the 2 affordables, or the 10% affordables. Granted, everybody's got to agree that there's not a lot of room in general residential 5. You're gonna have to combine parcels to get anything in it there. Commercial 1 may be the only one you got it, but you gotta remember that a lot of commercial 1 in this, on the picture up there is probably in some sort of a water resource district too, so they're limited with that. And the other thing is, is there any way that we can count units, or bedrooms instead of units? You know what I mean? Because you might have somebody that comes in with all 1-bedroom units, and somebody might come in with 3s or something like that. So I don't know if we can do that or not, but that might be something to look into too. Because I'm sure that it would be more palatable if it was all 1-bedroom units instead of 3s, or a mix of 1 and 2s instead of 3s. So, you know, I don't know if we can put that in the zoning or not. Maybe Mark could say that, but at another time.
Well, yeah, well, there's definitely zoning code that can be written more specific than we deal with, but in general, the way we've been doing things forever is, you know, how many units per square feet of lot area, or how many per acre, things of that nature.
Yeah, that's why we're
So-
still doing it years
Oh, yeah,
forward.
because
Yeah.
that's the way it's done, yeah, I
Got it
know.
right this time,
But-
we might not have to do it, but I'm sure that everybody would be amenable
Yeah.
if they had a by-right situation where they could just come in with a plan and show it. Don't forget, as Kobe said, most of the stuff involves parking. We're still at 1.5 spaces per unit. You know, unit, doesn't say anything about bedrooms, it just says units. So, you know, maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong, I don't know, I don't have any opinion on that. But, you know, the unit and the bedroom thing, and I'll hold, but I think they both go together. I don't think you can do one without the other, because if you can want somebody to, you know, have something by right, they're willing to put, obviously, they're gonna be willing to put in the affordables, but you have to make it palatable to them. So if you went from 2,750 down to 2,000, that would open up a couple of more units to cover the cost of that affordable unit.
Right.
And I don't think it's gonna blow up the project. that much more by adding a couple more units. Now, is it 1 unit per 4 units if you're doing I read something in here, if you build a 4th unit, it's gotta be affordable, so that's 25%. Is it 25% or is it 10%?
We're not,
10.
it's 10%.
10%, okay,
Right.
but didn't I read something in here?
I believe,
Yeah,
yeah, 4
if
gets
you-
you 1,
Yeah, if you build 4 units, you gotta build one, you gotta make one affordable.
or within.
I don't know where
the
the wording is on that. Originally, we were going with a 25% affordable bylaw. We were 10% of one type and 15 in another. We pulled that out of the inclusionary zoning bylaw to simplify everything because of the MBTA requirement and
Right.
the recent change that they had on 10% only in this, within a half mile.
Okay.
So-
I know I read that somewhere.
I think it needs to, we need to go through it and make sure that's not in there, because I think I read it the first time I read through it, but maybe since there's a second version that came out today, that maybe it was removed. I know we did you guys did a lot of editing.
Yeah, we did. We actually made some recent changes, and
Yeah.
it was pointed out to me that I need to make at least one other change. So when we get to that, which we probably should if you're going to do this,
Oh, we're running out of time.
oh, we run out of time, right?
Of course we are, but I'm going, Counselor Frangillo's has had his hand up for a while, so I'm going to go to Kobe, and then, yeah. Kobe?
Can you hear me good?
Yes.
Switch to my phone. Is it any different?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sound better.
Perfect.
Can you hear us?
All right, we'll take it. Yeah. I just want to bring this back to the larger picture, and I'll try to ground it, right? We're looking at the type of development that we do want to welcome, to support our businesses, to allow for different housing types, to create a walkable downtown. That's places like Depot Plaza, the old food pantry, the place that the food pantry is looking at, the DNAV property. We want to allow those to be developed in a way that supports our downtown. And, my question to Brian is, does this bring us any closer to that? Because my sense is no. The hindrance there is not multifamily by right, it's every other regulation that's not in line with the historical building that we love downtown.
Well, as I said earlier, there's a lot of different issues related to this, and if you want to change them all at the same time, you're gonna have to, let's rewrite all of zoning bylaw. There's a lot of different issues. If you wanted if you don't have to get a special permit to go with a certain amount of multifamily homes and multifamily units, but you have a small lot, you might need to go to special permit to get an extra floor on your building. So there's a lot of different things, right? So you're going to likely want to get a waiver on some of the parking required. It touches on all kinds of issues. And you want a developer to come in and not just think about money, but to think about the surrounding area and how it fits in. And, could I put a restaurant on the first floor or whatever, and really think about how that fits into the neighborhood. And so there's a million issues to discuss, Kobe, but this is to address the housing density, to allow a certain amount by right, and a rest by special permit. If the town would like to go with a different density, that they allow, 30 units or 40 units by right, I think you're gonna end up with a lot of people fighting back on that. I think, so this is kind of middle ground, if you will. It's not, we have to allow some by right, but at the same time, we giving the opportunity for a developer to go for a special permit for others, for additional units, so.
My concern is not that we need to add more density than what you're saying, but that the regulations as stand don't allow for the density that we're saying we want. That this isn't going, because our lot sizes are so small downtown, that this isn't actually going to achieve the 15 type of housing unit that we need. This will make us no different than we were yesterday in terms of allowing the types of development that we want to encourage downtown. Right, so it's not, I'm not calling for more, I'm just saying that this doesn't do what we're saying that it does when it's, just in isolation.
I'm gonna, Jamie has his hand up, he wants to comment.
So, Councilor Frangillo, I'm not going to articulate right or wrong. I don't think there is a right or wrong on these. If this bylaw had been put into place for the 117 Dean Ave project, you'd have a substantial more of affordable units based on the inclusionary zoning ratio. So I think to say that it wouldn't have an impact, I'm not sure is entirely accurate. The second thing I would say is, you are correct. A lot of the parcels in those zones are small. And even setbacks and parking requirements, we're talking about a de minimis amount of space, that even changing those, like for example, getting rid of parking requirements or reducing them by half, also are not going to make a substantial change in the dynamics of the housing. I think the 3-family will. I think we're trying to redefine what is the multifamily 4 units and more. We're trying to comply with MBTA communities. Some of these issues are a little bit out of our control until the state decides to do things differently. The only argument I would say is I think it is important to consider as we close out this meeting to ensure that we don't allow the perfect to be the enemy of the good, and that the town of Franklin has to do something at some point to address some of these issues. And maybe there is scenarios where multiple lots are bought up, and then you're seeing a tear down, or there was a fire on a couple of units in downtown who I know those owners would like to see more than what they had there before. And if you do get those lots, those smaller lots torn down, and you're able to combine 2 or 3 or 4 or more parcels, I think this bylaw has a substantial impact. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Jamie. Well, I think you mentioned, what I was thinking is that we were running out of time and we haven't got to the inclusionary zoning bylaw yet. So I think we should just put it on the next agenda. Is that
November
okay?
30th.
November 30th? All right, awesome. November 30th. We will continue this discussion. I want to thank everyone for all of their, Kobe still has his hand up, but he took it down, now he's laughing.
I'm gonna be tired.
I want to thank all of you for being here and all of your insight. It's very important to me to have everyone say what they think, and then we get to think about it a little bit more and then come up with the best plan for Franklin. So on that, I would accept a motion to adjourn.
So,
I know.
Second.
Second. I'm waiting for a second. Kobe?
He's gone.
Yes.
Is it? Counselor Sheridan?
yes.
Counselor Jones? Beth Wierling?
Yes.
Greg Rondo?
Yes.
Bruce Hunchard?
Yes.
Chair, yes. All in favor, let's go, okay. Good night, everybody. We already did it,
Non-debate.